Hey, coworkers.
Welcome to Coworkers in Crime, the podcast where office chatter meets crime discussion.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Krystal.
Yes, we really do work together.
And yes, we're totally obsessed with true crime.
From water cooler whispers to cold case deep dives,
we're here to bring you stories that keep us chatting way past our coffee breaks.
So grab your coffee,
lock your desk drawer, and let's get into this week's case.
St. Louis, Missouri, November 1930. A bank sits on the corner of Olive and Grand, a marble-fronted symbol of stability in a country that suddenly has none. The Great Depression is tightening its grip. People are losing homes, losing savings, losing trust. But inside the Grand National Bank, something else is happening. Something no one will explain. Because today, the police guards who normally stand watch over the vault, they're gone.
300 miles away in Chicago, a city already drowning in corruption, gangland politics, and prohibition money, another bank is about to be hit. Not by amateurs, not by desperate men, but by professionals who know exactly how to disappear into a city that's already mastered the art of looking the other way.
2 robberies, 2 major cities, 2 investigations that went nowhere. And nearly a century later, we still don't know who did it.
Today, we're going to take you back to the early and mid-20th century to 2 unsolved bank robberies that should have been headline cases that had everything: timing, planning, corruption, organized crime, fingerprints, and still no arrests.
We're talking about the Grand National Bank robbery in St. Louis in 1930 and the First National Bank robbery in Chicago, a case that got buried under bigger, flashier crimes.
I just love that we're doing this one because Sharon was like, I've had enough of the sad stories.
Yeah, so coworker Sharon, actual coworker Sharon, suggested bank robberies as a kind of a brain break or emotional break.
Yeah, and definitely we need those sometimes. This gets to be some heavy storytelling when it's women and children and just so many sad things. Too many relatable things lately.
Yeah. So let's start in St. Louis. It's 1930. The Great Depression has just begun, and banks are falling left and right. People are terrified. They're pulling money out of institutions they once trusted with their lives.
And that fear creates opportunity. Bank robberies spike across the country. Some are chaotic, desperate, smash and grabs, but others, like the ones we're going to talk about, are something different entirely.
This wasn't chaotic. It wasn't desperate. It was coordinated.
And one of the strangest parts is that the bank actually had police protection, like armed officers stationed inside the building because of just what the economic climate was at the time.
But on that morning of the robbery, these officers were suddenly reassigned. No explanation, no replacements, just gone.
And within hours, the robbers walk in.
Here's the thing about unsolved bank robberies. They're not just about money. They're about systems. Systems that fail, systems that protect the wrong people, systems that decide which crimes matter and which ones quietly disappear.
Both of the cases today sit right at that intersection, where crime meets politics, where investigation meets influence, and where justice just evaporates. The good thing about our case today, though, is that Rachel and I aren't doing this on a Saturday. We decided to do this at dinner time. So we've both freshly eaten. So I'm so curious how powerful our brains are going to be in an evening that we've eaten. And we've had a whole day behind us. It's not usual that we don't record on a Saturday or Sunday morning.
Yeah, usually we're in the morning. For a reason. We're sharper.
I think so. All right. Before we dive in, here's something to sit with. If a bank is robbed on the exact day its police protection is mysteriously pulled, is that a coincidence or coordination? No, let's flip a coin.
Oh, it really could be either, but it just screams coordination to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That all of a sudden, however many bank guards are reassigned on that day, and within hours, the robbers are walking in. I mean, are they just sitting across the street watching the bank, hoping that the guards won't be there for a shift or two and they can make their, take this opportunity? Or it just sounds coordinated.
Yeah, coordinated and corrupted,
So this bank had, it had St. Louis police had been assigning officers to banks across the city as a deterrent. People were scared. Banks were vulnerable, and the Grand National was considered a high-risk target.
Yeah, and it isn't just some tiny neighborhood branch. It's a major institution. Marble floors, brass fixtures, a vault that was supposed to be impenetrable. And because of the economic panic, the bank had something most banks didn't, and that was the police outside. But on this morning, November 14th, 1930, those officers, of course, get reassigned with no explanation. So here we are.
And within hours of the bank opening, a group of armed men walked through the front doors. It's mid-morning. Customers are lined up at the teller windows. Clerks are sorting deposits. The vault is open because it's business hours, and the bank is running on a skeleton crew because of the economic downturn.
So these four men, they're calm and they're coordinated. They're not even wearing masks, which is always interesting because that usually means one of two things. They're so confident they aren't going to be identified, or they're confident no one will come after them when they're done.
And they move fast. One man heads straight for the vault. Another jumps the counter, and the others control the lobby. Employees are tied up. Customers are ordered to the floor, and within minutes, the robbers are hauling over $1 million in cash and securities, which in today's money is about $18 million.
That's amazing. That's so crazy. To can imagine just walking into a bank like, all right, give me all your money. Don't even care to wear a mask. So they just walk in.
It sounds very Western movie-ish.
Yeah.
Isn't that how every Western movie, the bank robbery is described? Like they just walk in, give me your money, and walk back out.
And no one will get hurt. No shootout, no chase, no police response. Just walk in, grab the money, walk out. So the investigation does start immediately, at least on paper. Detectives interview employees, customers, anyone that might have really seen anything, but descriptions are so vague. The robbers are so calm and professional and didn't draw a ton of attention to themselves. So there wasn't much for anyone to say, really.
And then something strange happens. A relative of a known St. Louis gangster comes forward and names possible suspects, men connected to organized crime.
Yeah, but the police don't even pursue it, not seriously and not publicly anyway.
And within 3 years, the case is closed. No arrest, no charges, nothing.
So here's where the systemic angle would come in. Grand National Bank collapses shortly after this robbery. The loss of funds combined with the economic crisis is just too much, so the bank fails.
Which means the robbery didn't just hurt the institution, it hurt the depositors. People who already had nothing suddenly had even less.
And when a bank collapses, the paper trail collapses with it. Records disappear, accountability disappears, and investigations just lose momentum.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, because I'm sure our listeners are wondering like we're wondering. Why were the police pulled from the bank that morning?
The official explanation was, quote unquote, reassignment due to staffing needs, but that explanation doesn't even really hold up, not when the city was actively increasing bank security everywhere.
And not when the robbery happens hours after the guards left. Like I said, unless they were sitting at the cafe across the street waiting for an opportunity because it might happen.
Yeah, but I think that was popular. I mean, the Southern mobs, as we heard Grandma tell us, right, are everywhere, but not as open as I think they are up north back in the day, So this to me feels like it makes sense that it's like the cops and the mob run interference for each other. So I don't know, that doesn't surprise me that they get called off and there's no real investigation, but on the paper trail, there's investigation. It just doesn't seem odd to me. But this is where the historians and crime researchers start raising eyebrows because the timing is too perfect and too convenient.
And when you add in that organized crime angle, St. Louis had a thriving underworld in the 1930s. The picture gets even murkier.
So let's break this down. We have a major bank, police protection suddenly removed, a coordinated robbery, a gangster connection, the bank's collapses not long after, and the case closes with no arrests.
And when you look at that all together, you have to ask, was this a robbery or was it a sanctioned withdrawal?
Meaning, did someone with influence make sure the guards weren't there?
Sounds it to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you really have to be like all caught up on The Sopranos to guess that, you know?
Right?
So I feel
yeah, you don't even have to know the underworld of organized crime to have this fit in kind of a nice, neat little package.
Yeah, and something to consider, if the robbery's planned with inside knowledge, not just like the bank layout, but police schedules, how many people would even really have to be involved?
And how many of those people would have to stay silent for nearly a century? And we've talked about this. If I was involved, I don't know that I could keep my mouth shut.
Squeal.
So
No.
yeah, right, I would
Mhm.
squeal. I would not. Note to everyone, don't trust me with secrets, as I have to tell somebody.
I mean, hey, it's hard to keep something like that. I mean, especially if you're like trying to sleep at night. If you want to sleep again.
I mean, was there somebody walking around with like extra money? Was it obvious? Did somebody all of a sudden buy a house or start a new business, go on a vacation? Something that was out of the ordinary. These are the questions I have.
Yeah. I mean, and that brings us to like the organized crime angle. Like St. Louis in the 30s was home to several powerful crime families, bootlegging, gambling, extortion, all of that's happening. And banks were easy targets, especially if you have the right connections.
And that relative that came forward and named men tied to one of these families, but the police didn't pursue it. And that's suspicious. Even today, almost 100 years later, that is still suspicious.
Yeah, very. Because organized crime, usually when it's involved, that usually just it gets things complicated in the investigation. Like witnesses disappear and evidence get lost, and sometimes the case goes really quiet. So that means there's coercion. That means we're probably like holding hands.
Yeah. So why did this case go cold?
All right, let's see. It could be one, lack of physical evidence. The robbers were in and out so fast they didn't leave fingerprints or a shell casing or anything that could really be investigated.
And then the bank collapses. When the institution fails, so does the investigative infrastructure.
Yeah, and then number 3, organized crime influence. Like if a suspect is connected to a powerful family, then the police may have been pressured to back off, which we've kind of seen in some of our early cases.
Yeah. And then finally, we have the police withdrawal. Whether it was incompetence or corruptions, it crippled the investigation from the very beginning.
So this is where the connection to our second case really comes in, because Chicago, just a few years later, has its own unsolved bank mystery. It's a different city, different circumstances, but it's still the same pattern. Organized crime shadows, investigative failures, and a case that just vanished from public memory.
And Chicago raises the same question St. Louis does. When a robbery is this clean, who is behind it?
So let's shoot over to Chicago. And think about, like, how do you forget that almost in today's world, $18 million, but can you imagine $1 million disappearing back then? That is a lot of money. So
especially during the Depression when
yeah.
money was scarce.
Mm-hmm.
And people were going into banks and just taking all of their savings out.
Yeah, putting it in the mattress. That's where that came from.
Right. So our second case for today is the first national bank robbery in Chicago, Illinois, during the mid-20th century.
If St. Louis was a case shaped by timing and silence, Chicago is going to be shaped by noise. The noise of a city drowning in corruption, organized crime, political chaos, where a bank robbery could happen in broad daylight and still get overshadowed by everything else that's happening on the streets.
And that's exactly what happened. A robbery that should have been front page news barely made a ripple.
So let's set the stage. Chicago in the mid-1900s, a city defined by contradictions. On one hand, booming industry, skyscrapers, money flowing through the loop. And then on the other hand, you have political machines, bribery, mob influence, a police department that was, to put it gently, selective about what it pursued.
And First National Bank wasn't just any bank. It was one of the city's most important financial institutions, a symbol of stability in a city that isn't always feeling stable.
I mean, but stability doesn't mean safety. On a weekday morning, during normal business hours, a group of men walk in and executed one of the cleanest robberies in Chicago history.
Yeah, it's just after 10 a.m. The bank is busy. Again, we have tellers counting cash, customers filling out deposit slips, managers moving between offices. Nothing unusual.
Then 3 men enter. They're not frantic. They're not nervous. They're not trying to blend in. They're not drawing attention to themselves, but not blending in.
Yeah, and they're moving with purpose. One heads straight for the manager's office. Another positions himself near the vault, and the third controls the lobby. Did they hear what happened at the other one? Like, did they follow the same pattern as St. Louis?
It seems exactly the same, right? The detail that stands out is they knew where the vault, knew the vault schedule, like when it would be open. They knew when the armored car delivery had been there, so they knew it had just finished.
And that's not random. That's not even opportunistic. That is planned.
Yeah, within minutes, they have the manager at gunpoint, employees on the floor, and the vault clerk is forced to open the inner compartment of the vault.
And then the robbers walk out with a significant amount of cash. The exact figure varies by source, but it was enough to trigger a federal response.
Except that response goes nowhere.
The FBI gets involved almost immediately. Bank robbery had been a federal crime since the 1930s. Agents interview witnesses, collect statements, and start building profiles.
But the descriptions, again, are vague. The robbers were calm, professional, and they didn't really leave anything useful behind. Once again, no fingerprints, no shell casings. They didn't even drop anything.
And then the investigation hits its first major roadblock: Chicago's organized crime landscape.
Yeah, so let's dig into that. Chicago in this era was dominated by organized crime, not just the remnants of prohibition, but gambling syndicates, extortion rings, and political fixers who control entire neighborhoods.
And the First National Bank sat right in the middle of that ecosystem. If you robbed a bank in Chicago, you weren't just committing a crime. You were stepping into a political and criminal minefield.
Investigators quietly suspected the robbery was connected to a professional crew with ties to the Outfit, which is Chicago's dominant crime syndicate at the time.
But here's the problem. If the Outfit was involved, witnesses wouldn't talk, police wouldn't push, and evidence had a way of evaporating.
So Chicago PD opens a case, they interview employees, and they canvass the area. They even check for getaway cars.
But the investigation was slow, understaffed, and overshadowed by bigger crimes: murders, bombings, political scandals.
And the details that really stand out is the bank robbery barely made the newspaper. That's really crazy. Just a few short articles, no follow-ups, no investigative reporting.
Which is bizarre. I mean, this is a major crime in a major city, and it should have been headline news.
I know. This reminds me of, remember the musical Chicago? And I mean, I'm thinking of the one with, the movie, but every crime is such a big deal. I mean, you think people are crime junkies now. They really were back then. That was front page news. That was headline news when something big happened, and the papers loved to print everything. So that was their social media at the time. Everything hit the papers. So
and didn't papers get printed twice a day, in the morning and the evening? So you had the morning for what happened overnight, and then the evening for what happened during the day?
Exactly. And this is this huge bank robbery. That's just not something that would really be that quiet typically. So super odd. Imagine a bank getting robbed today. I don't know. It just seems like that would be such a big deal. I don't know. Maybe it would. Maybe I can't imagine it being quiet. That's all I'll say.
Well, there are crimes that people still talk about today. Maybe not these bank robberies, but in Massachusetts, there's the Gardner Museum where a famous work of art was stolen, and they believe it was a conspiracy because the person was dressed as a guard, came in. They still don't know where this art is. This comes up frequently, and you hear about it.
I mean,
no matter where you are.
That is really odd, though, for like pieces of history to disappear like that is even worse than money. Like, yeah, robbing a bank is pretty wild, but stealing a piece of history and a historic piece of art, can you imagine? There's probably a whole underground of that somewhere.
Well, like in Paris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
that was recent, too.
Right, that just happened.
Yeah.
That was all over the news for a while.
Yeah.
It didn't just like get shoved under the rug after 24 hours. I mean, I don't think they know who did it, and I don't think they're ever going to find those jewels, but
no.
But back to Chicago, and let's get back to our story. So let's break this down. We have a professional crew, inside knowledge of that vault schedule, a clean escape, no meaningful police follow-up, and a city where organized crime influenced everything.
So let's get through our thought-provoking questions. But if a robbery is executed really cleanly and there's no trace, is it because the criminals are just that good, or there was never going to be an investigation in the first place? Not a real one anyway.
Right. And in Chicago, in that era, I think both answers are possible.
That's very true. Because
I mean, if they're professionals, that's your job to.
How savvy are police back then, really?
Right. Because we have to take a look back. It's 1930s, 1940s. There's no security cameras. There's no DNA to talk about. I mean, that is many, many years off the radar. We don't have cell phones. You don't have that cell phone tower data. You don't have any of that.
Yeah, there's no digital footprint back then. Yeah.
Right. There's none of that. So I don't know how we look at it from today's lens, but they didn't have any of that. So how do you look at it and go, wow, do you remember they didn't have surveillance cameras 24/7. They didn't have the news 24/7. People didn't have phones in their hands and they're recording, video of stuff happening.
Which means it really does go both ways too, because then it's like, if we really want to catch someone, we're going to catch someone. You don't have any way of really beyond a reasonable doubt back then. So it's just like, yeah, you'll do. You robbed the bank. I mean, that's another thing. They could have just said somebody did and created a patsy, and they never did that. So why would a case just vanish? Why did this case just disappear? So like the last one, let's break that down.
So the first one is competing headlines. Chicago is dealing with violent crime, political corruption, and mob wars. A bank robbery didn't stand a chance.
Another reason could be organized crime influence. If the outfit was involved, then the case was dead on arrival.
And the third one is just lack of evidence. These robbers were professionals. They didn't leave anything behind.
And another could be institutional apathy. The crime gets attention, or some crimes get attention, some don't, and this one didn't. So some will, some won't, so what kind of thing.
So now we have two robberies, St. Louis and Chicago, separated by just a few years and a few hundred miles, but connected by the same themes.
Inside knowledge, organized crime shadows, investigations that stall, and crimes that vanish.
And both raise the same question. When a robbery is this clean, who's really in control? So now that we've walked through both cases, St. Louis and Chicago, two robberies separated by time and distance, but connected by something deeper.
Yeah, so let's ask the question that sits on the heart of both cases. Why do some crimes become legendary and others are quietly forgotten?
Because when you strip away the details, the faults, the timing, the suspects, what you're left with is a pattern of institutional failure, a pattern of selective investigation, and a pattern of silence. And that silence, it's not accidental.
So let's tie the themes together of both. You have inside knowledge. Both of them require someone who knew something, like the vault schedules, the guard rotation, bank vulnerabilities, and the exact timing of cash deliveries. That's just not luck. That's inside knowledge. It's inside access.
St. Louis had a thriving underworld in the 1930s. Chicago had the outfit, which was one of the most powerful crime syndicates in American history. And when organized crime intersects with financial institutions, you get robberies that aren't just about money. They're about influence, leverage, and most importantly, they're about power.
Yeah. And these both situations have these investigations that get stalled, or I wouldn't even call that stalled. It's like performative. In both cases, the investigations hit these walls almost immediately, and it's not only because evidence wasn't there, but it's because the will to actually research it or look into it didn't seem to be there. And that's the part that kind of stings, that justice is not just about catching criminals. It's about the system caring enough to even try to.
And the final one is that, crimes that vanished. These are crimes that vanished from public memory. St. Louis had a bank collapse. Chicago had bigger headlines. Both cities had reasons to move on. And when a crime disappears from public memory, it disappears from institutional memory too. Cold cases don't just stay cold. Sometimes they freeze.
Yeah, it's almost like they became like petrified. Like they're
right.
They're like part of a wall now. You want to myth bust a little bit?
Yeah, let's myth bust, because Hollywood has done a number on how we think about bank robberies, especially in the early to mid 20th century.
So myth 1, bank robbers were chaotic, violent, and reckless. Yeah, I think of Tommy guns and like cigar hanging out of the mouth. I think about that kind of thing, but not always. The most successful ones, like the one we covered today, the two we covered today, they were calm and coordinated and quiet. Just, hey, how you doing?
Right.
They don't fire guns. They don't leave. Sorry, they don't fire guns and they don't leave fingerprints. They don't even improvise. They just walk in, walk out.
Because they're professionals.
Right.
So the second myth is police always respond quickly. Nope. In St. Louis, the police weren't even there. And in Chicago, the response was slow and unfocused. And in both cases, the lack of urgency wasn't just bad luck, it was systemic.
Yeah. So the last myth we'll kind of talk about is, if a robbery wasn't solved, it must have been brilliant. Well, sometimes, but sometimes the investigation was, again, not meant to happen. It was never meant to succeed. And that's an uncomfortable truth. Some crimes just stay unsolved because solving them would have been inconvenient in a bigger way. What do we do with cases like these, where the trail goes cold before it even begins?
We remember them, we talk about them, and we bring them back into the light.
Because forgotten crimes aren't harmless. They're warnings. Warnings about what happens when institutions fail, or when they even choose to fail.
And maybe the real question isn't who robbed these banks. Maybe it's who benefited from the silence.
Yeah, and why that silence is so easy to maintain.
And considering how long ago these bank robberies were, we may never know the names of the men who walked into those banks, but we can understand the systems that let them walk out.
Yeah, these were good stories. I like this because we haven't really talked about this type of crime. I feel like we've always talked about really these very dark and unsolved people on people hurtful crime, but these kinds of crimes are just a completely different alley. Like, we're just going down a completely different way. I enjoyed these. Great job, Sharon.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon, for bringing this up, because I was talking to her and telling her how heavy some of our cases were, and I said, it's really starting to weigh on me. And
yeah,
she was like,
felt it.
I think she said, yeah, I could hear it. Oh, she was about to listen to one of I can't remember which case it was. She was about to listen to it. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, we just ended because we didn't know how to wrap it up. We were so drained. And she goes, yeah, I can hear that sometimes. And, then it was, you could do bank robberies. And I'm like, oh, bank robberies. Yeah, I never thought of bank robberies. So
yeah.
Thank you, Sharon, for giving us this lighter lift for the episode.
Yeah, and let us know if there's some crimes you want to talk about that we haven't hit yet. Something that's not our most common talked about cases. So if you've got something you'd like to hear us talk about, be sure and send it into coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com.
Till next time, coworkers.
Bye, coworkers. That wraps up this week's episode.
Thanks for listening, whether you're at your office, at your home, or somewhere in between. We're glad you're here.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Like what you heard? Leave us a review and share it with your coworkers.
Got a case you want us to cover or office drama that feels criminal? Send it to us at coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com or check the episode notes for all of our social handles. Until next time, coworkers.
Stay curious, stay safe, and stay caffeinated.